Hello, hello, hello. This is Marshall Goldsmith. Welcome to LinkedIn Live. So happy to be back with you today. My comrades Sanyin, Siang, and I are going to have a wonderful, wonderful show today. And thanks to the great people at Thinkers 50, our partners in this project, and the people at Methods who are doing all the technology behind it. Great project, a great thing that they can do for anybody. So thanks to everyone. Here we are. I'm going to briefly introduce myself, then my comrade Sanyin, and then we'll get rolling. I'm Marshall. I'm from a small town called Valley Station, Kentucky. I went to school in Indiana. I got a PhD at UCLA. I was a college professor and dean when I was very, very young. Then after that, I travel all around the world speaking and teaching, and then I coach executives, and then I write books and articles. And I have this project I'm working on called the 100 Coaches, which is amazing. Although it says 100, we have about 300 people now, where we have 3 rules: no money, no guilt, no expectation. All we try to do is give to each other, and the only price for learning from everyone is to give back to more people yourself. So it's been a fantastic, fantastic project. And 3 of the people who are members of our wonderful, wonderful community are here today. The first person I'd like to introduce herself is my good buddy, Sanyin Siang. Sanyin, tell us, and by the way, is she ranked the number 2 coach in the whole world? No. How about 3? No. Where was she ranked in the entire Thinkers 50 ranking? Number 1 in this world, number 1. And I used to be number 1, but now I'm old. So they put me in the Hall of Fame where they put old people. And now we have our new number 1, Sanyin. Sanyin, hello, my good buddy. Introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Marshall. Hi, everyone. So as the world's number 1 leadership and executive coach, I help leaders and their organizations reimagine and build stronger teams so that they can thrive through uncertainty and beyond. I work with CEOs, generals, tech founders, and students because I'm also the executive director of the Coach K Leadership and Ethics Center at Duke University's Buchel School of Business. And in today's session, because we'll have a live interactive session, please remember to put your questions in the comments, and we'll be getting to them later on in the show. And then throughout the show, if you hear something that you like, also let us know by clicking on the like button. So if Marshall bursts into song, click that love button or like button. I'm excited to introduce our first guest, Asheesh Advani. So Asheesh is the CEO of Junior Achievement Worldwide. Junior Achievement is one of the world's largest NGOs with offices in over 100 countries. They reach 12 million students each year. And Asheesh also has this long track record of being an accomplished entrepreneur. He is CEO of 2 tech companies, one which was bought by Richard Branson, and the other which was bought by a public corporation that was listed on NASDAQ. He is also the father of twin teenagers, and spouse to Helen Rosenfeld, who is a nonprofit leader who runs a pioneering science fair organization in the US, which is based in Massachusetts. Back to you, Marshall, for introducing Fiona.
Now, Sanyin, we're supposed to talk about the title of the program in the beginning, and we both forgot again. So the program is officially called Entrepreneurial Mindset, a Force for Good. This is good. Now, Sanyin, is this a force for evil or a force for good?
Force for good.
Force for good. Now, I'm going to introduce our good friend Fiona. Fiona is an entrepreneur herself, has been ranked in the top 1% of entrepreneurs from around the world. And she runs this interesting organization called Women's Innovators and Leaders Development, which is acronym WILD Network. I love that title. Yeah, the WILD Network. And she's also a professor of practice at the Georgetown University School of Business. So this is good. Welcome, Fiona, and welcome, Asheesh. We'll begin with the wonderful Fiona. Yay. All right. First, what is the entrepreneurial mindset? That's a good question. And then I'm going to get into how do you develop for yourself and others, because that's something every one of our listeners can benefit from hearing. What is the entrepreneurial mindset? Let's start with Fiona.
Yeah, thanks, Marshall. I'd love to enlist the help of our audience here. I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, those who are making change within their organizations, as well as social innovators at large watching the program. So I'm going to tick off some of the characteristics that we see that entrepreneurs have, that social innovators have, and would love to hear from you in the comment box if these resonate with you. You may also have a few others that you want to add. So, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, social innovators out there, are you someone that's got grit? Do you see ways that you can make products better, services better, or even processes better in order to have a positive change in the place that you work, in the community around you? Are you someone who's got a lot of ownership over what you do? Do you feel like you can be a force for positive change, and that by taking ownership and marshaling the time and talent of others, that you can make change? These are the kinds of entrepreneurial characteristics that we often see in those around us who are these forces for change in our environments. We often talk about entrepreneurs as people who are finding new ways to deliver products and services. But of course, social innovators for good, we find them in all industries and in all walks of life. Like, these are the doctors and nurses that have been in the headlines recently, who are finding new ways to efficiently and effectively help patients with COVID. We see this in our communities right now, where we see community activists and a whole different range of people wanting to work for ways in a positive way to bring the kinds of positive changes that they want in their communities and to the world at large. So when we talk about change makers, entrepreneurs, it's very important that we discuss this question about an entrepreneurial mindset, because of course, many people can complain or see the way that something could be different, but it's in fact a small number who take that bold step to be the change maker, who have that entrepreneurial mindset. I'm looking forward to what Asheesh has to say, but I'll say that one of the things that I see as being so critical in that mindset is seeing yourself as someone who can affect change. Be able to connect the dots, take the inputs in from others, to kind of listen, learn, and then act in conjunction with others to be this kind of positive force. A couple of the characteristics that we see, and that I think in the work that I do as a mentor and the work that I do as a teacher and leader, is to think about how to foster a positive mindset. Because when we're out there on that limb, as a change maker, as a social change maker, there is a degree of risk involved, right? We might be putting ideas forward that haven't been put forward before. Often people around us are not comfortable with change. You may be, as a change maker, you may more often hear people say why that can't happen versus why it can. And that's why that characteristic that I mentioned about ownership and grit is like so critical. But key to channeling all that grit and ownership and vision is this entrepreneurial mindset of positivity. So even when we face challenges. And of course, even the most positive, effective social change makers, have those moments of self-doubt, and have those, moments of frustration. The positive mindset can make all of the difference because it helps you to focus on how can I solve this problem? Your positivity is infectious, affects others, and helps others bring their time and talent to the table to be able to give their best selves, and I think get the most amount of joy, out of doing what is often the hard work of putting others up. So positive mindset as being a key factor is just something I wanted to share this.
Yay! I like that. Now, Asheesh, before you begin, the one point I would like to highlight on what Fiona said is that business about marshaling time and talent. I think that is kind of the most important thing she said, marshaling time. I like that phrase, marshaling. Very, very wise. All right. Now, Asheesh, how can you develop this entrepreneurial mindset in yourself, and how can you help others do this?
Thanks, Marshall. I'm going to try to use the word marshalling in my answer as well, just to make sure that you like it. I want to start by saying that I'm just so honored. Fiona is on the board of JA Worldwide. Marshall, you're a chancellor at JA University, and Sanyin, you've been connected to our team and just been so helpful that all three of you are already doing what you can to support building an entrepreneurial mindset in youth around the world. Junior Achievement, we've been thank you for clapping. Junior Achievement, we've been around now for just over 100 years. We celebrated our centennial last year. So we've developed quite a bit of, I'd say, expertise through successes and failures of how we actually are able to build an entrepreneurial mindset in young people around the world. And the good news is we have found there's actually specific things you can do based on science and based on data that actually works. I'm going to share some of those with you super quickly, particularly for some of the parents who are listening in from around the world. I know you've got an audience from around the world. I'm going to try to make this as relevant as possible for you with specific tips. So the first is to focus on role models. Young people love to learn from role models because it actually does change their mindset. If you're, let's say, a young girl in India or a young girl in Mexico, reading a book about Richard Branson's success as an entrepreneur may not actually change your mindset. In fact, it would have the opposite effect to say, geez, I'm nothing like that person. How can I ever be a successful entrepreneur? But meeting a role model who comes from the same background as you, maybe even has the same color of skin that you have, or at least has the same upbringing that you've had, starts to make you see yourself in what's possible. So important. The second is having other people tell you that you actually can be successful or have been successful or will be entrepreneurial. It's a weird aspect of human nature that you start to believe what other people tell you, particularly people who are not your parents, right? Your parents are biased. I've got teenage boys. I know every time I tell them something, they now just roll their eyes and say, I don't believe you, Dad. So, but if you hear from somebody else, either a teacher, somebody who works in the business world, even an uncle or a friend or somebody who's not your parents, you start to really believe that you actually can be an entrepreneur. I know what happened to me early on where people told me I could be entrepreneurial, and it had such an impact on my life. And I want to echo what Fiona said about optimism and being able to root negative thoughts into positive ones. That makes you a resilient person. JA right now, we have a network of teams in over 100 countries that are resilient and have pivoted the organization to respond to this crisis and be able to deliver our programs digitally. And I'm just so proud of my colleagues around the network that have been able to take that entrepreneurial mindset that we teach young people and apply it to our own lives and our own jobs.
Sanyin, what's a good question from you?
So Asheesh, what you and Fiona said, it resonates so much, especially this idea of sometimes you can't be, we are what we see. And so this idea of seeing others, for these young people who are like them as role models, that's just really resonate. And it's a big part of what we do at Duke and also in my own personal work. So a question for Asheesh and Fiona is, you both lead these massive global organizations that foster leadership and entrepreneurial thinking. For example, Asheesh, JA Worldwide is in 118 countries. You have more than 100,000 volunteers. and 100 million living alumni. And Fiona, with the Women Innovators and Leaders Network, you have members in 50 countries who want to advance women's leadership and equity and diversity and inclusion in this global development sector. So a question for both of you is, what can you tell us about the global trends and leadership priorities that are the same and that are also different across countries at this moment? Asheesh, let's start with you. Global trends and leadership priorities that you're seeing.
Sure, it's a great question. And it's a complicated question because there's so much social change happening so quickly in the world right now. There's that great Satya Nadella comment of, him seeing 2 years of transformation in 2 months at Microsoft. I think it's even more accelerated since he made that quote. And I struggle as a leader to make sure that what I do and what I say is representative of as many stakeholders as I get a chance to speak for in this vast global network. I will say we've introduced a pretty simple framework to make that easier, and which allows us to get people to buy in to things which have to be the same or have to be different. It's called the fixed, flexible, freestyle framework. Some things that are globally fixed, some things that are regionally flexible, things that are different, say, in Africa versus Europe, and things which are locally freestyle. Sometimes what happens in Boston doesn't really apply to what should happen in Tennessee or should happen in a state in India. So we have to adapt our educational programming to meet very local needs, but also have some global standards. So that fixed, flexible, freestyle framework makes it easy. And I can tell you more about it, but that just gives you a framing of how we address the issue at our organization.
Sanyin,
Fiona?
I'd really good if
Yes.
people would ask questions. So put any questions in the chat box for Asheesh and Fiona. So if you have any questions, you write them in the chat box. So we would love to get your questions. Yeah, I love that model. And, I like what you said about that's something you can do to help other young people. I never thought about that. In my life, my uncle, you mentioned uncle. That's why I thought of my uncle really, in my family, no one went to college except my uncle. And he was a medical doctor. He married my aunt, and who was my mother's sister. And he always gave me a feeling of, you can do this, you can do it. And that meant a lot to me. And Sanyin, we have our 100 Coach organization. We have some people who were brought up very, very poor. Me, Mark Thompson, and much more than me, Curtis Martin. It might be nice to have a show about how these people can encourage young people, because I know the story of Curtis is just amazing, and it might be interesting to have a show just about that. So Asheesh, I love that thought. Sanyin, what's another good question for Fiona?
So one of the quick takeaways as I was listening to Asheesh, when you talk about the globally fixed and freestyle, is that also applies very much to what we're seeing in global organizations. As these multinational organizations, they also have to have the freestyle locally, but also have that global standards and global values. So it just reaffirms what Fiona said earlier, which is that entrepreneurialism, you don't have to be working in a startup to have that entrepreneurial mindset. Rather, that entrepreneurial mindset can be pervasive, regardless of what sector or industry you're in. Should we turn to Justin for questions? I know the audience has tons of questions. Justin.
Hello there. Good to be part of the show. We have a ton of questions and comments coming in from all around the world, from India to the UK to right here in the US. And I'm going to go to the UK first. Our first question comes from Matali Chopra. This question is actually for you, Asheesh. Matali says, how can we seed an entrepreneurial mindset in children early? And how do we make this mainstream as a part of school curriculum?
Oh, that's such a great question. Actually, Fiona, I think, can also comment about her work with working for aid agencies and actually funding the work that brings entrepreneurship curricula into the school environment. I will say JA has been working very hard to do that because if it's integrated in schools, the scalability of doing it, because it requires multiple touch points. You don't just magically become an entrepreneur in one interaction with one NGO or one organization. It takes multiple conversations to impact somebody's mindset. I guess the advice I would give the person who asked that question from the UK is rather than thinking of entrepreneurship as something you can get from a book, I would encourage the young person you have in mind to actually start early and fail early, and try to actually get them to launch real ventures, not PowerPoint presentations that show you what they can do with vision, but something that actually, even if it's selling something small to somebody that they've created, the satisfaction that comes from doing that gives you the confidence to do it again and again as you get older.
By the way, hello, Macaulay. She's a good friend. Okay.
More here. If we'd like to get some more from the audience, I'd love to answer as many as possible. Just know if you are in the audience there and you're watching this and we don't get to your question or your comment, Asheesh, Fiona, Marshall, and Sanyin will all be going back through the replay of this later, and we'll be responding to your questions and comments there. So if it doesn't get answered, just know that we do hear you and we do care. Next question comes from Pavitra Ramesh from India and says, hello, Fiona. Hello, Asheesh. The pandemic has pushed the pause button on entrepreneurial ventures, it seems. And how do we develop the courage to get back to it?
Yeah, Justin, that's such a great question. One of the things that's so important for entrepreneurs and for anybody making positive social change is building a tribe of people around you. So this can be in the form of trusted advisors, business colleagues, people who might be part of a mastermind group. That's where CEOs and executive directors and other leaders get together to share what's really going on in their organizations. So if things are feeling slow for you at the moment, one of my number one pieces of advice would be to think about how you can use this time to build your tribe in your entrepreneurial ecosystem, around you in India. And then, of course, with technology, there may be someone who could be very helpful to you, who has a key piece of advice or connection, who is on the other side of the world, but you could connect with, for example, through LinkedIn, Facebook, or other social media. My experience is that entrepreneurs are very willing to help other entrepreneurs, but they really have very much an ethos of pay it forward, that same kind of pay it forward spirit that Marshall spoke about at the beginning of this session today. So I would say you've got some time on your hands. You might be also feeling anxious or stressed as you need to adapt or pivot your business model. It is a great time to reach out to people who can be of assistance to you. And most people are going to say yes. And for those people who don't respond or don't have time, don't worry about it. You're resilient. Just go ahead and move on to the next person who can help you and who you in turn can probably help as well.
And Sanyin, I'd like to echo that point. Reach out.
Oh, click the like button, people. Click the like button. Marshall's singing.
When you feel like you can't move on, all that hope is gone. Okay, how about you, Asheesh?
No, I was going to just jump on what Fiona said and say the way to build courage not only involves surrounding yourself with people who are giving you that support, but recognizing there'll be some people who actually do hold you back and will roll their eyes when you say, I'm joining a mastermind group every month, or I'm getting encouragement from this positive group. There are some people who will just roll their eyes and say, oh, that's that crazy thing. Don't worry about those people. It takes a little bit of courage to not worry about those people. But once you get past that a little bit of courage, I guarantee you will start to see yourself as somebody who has greater courage. It's a small thing, but it makes a big impact.
Very good. Very good.
Right on.
Fiona, how about you?
Well, I think what I'd love to do is talk to role models. I think we have a question there. And that actually builds off to something Asheesh was saying, is that it's hard to be it if you can't see it. So the importance of role models for all of us is extremely important. We can often obtain, get closer to kind of role models, learn how they make decisions, how they solve problems, how they communicate with people in difficult situations. I mean, role models are incredibly helpful. And I'd love to connect this idea about the importance of role models with Sanyin's earlier question about trends that we're seeing globally. So as you know, while the Women Innovators and Leaders Development Network, we work globally and we have a big focus on advancing women's leadership, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. Hands down, there is no question that across the women and men who are part of our network in the US, in Canada, also in sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, Middle East, North Africa, there is so much enthusiasm and drive from women and men in the workplace to be able to have leadership opportunities regardless of their position in their organizations, their socioeconomic background, the language they speak, maybe the ethnic group that they're part of. People are ready to lead at every level. And women want and are creating opportunities for those leadership roles for themselves. And the role model piece, I'll go a step further to say not only the role models about people who are doing it, but learning how to do it, and what the research says about the value of doing it, that this very kind of concrete ways of doing it, how to do it, how to make the case for doing it is really critical. And I'll give salary equity as an example. So one of the key pieces in gender equity is about salary, right? People want to get paid as much as somebody sitting next to them doing the same job, even if I'm female and he's male, or even if I'm from a certain social or ethnic group and they're from another. And so, for example, leaders who are in a position to ensure gender equity, if they know that the research shows that people being paid properly and transparency around salary is going to result in people staying with you longer, giving you their all, those are powerful reasons to think about making those kinds of positive changes. So I think we need the role models, and we need to understand how are our role models affecting change. It's like people putting a tool on the table that we can pick up and use. It shortens our learning curve. I think it's quite motivating because now we see how to do it. And I just really want to urge all those leaders, like entrepreneurs who are part of our conversation today, to think about how can you inspire others and to be honest about how you're making the change that you are.
Justin, we have one final question for Asheesh.
Perfect. And Marshall, I got to say, it wouldn't be 100 Coaches live show without your singing. So thanks for not letting everybody down on that one. It was great. And real quick, outside of the question, Halima Ismail from Great Britain says to Asheesh and to you, Fiona, great topic. Diversity in leadership is amazing. She has some other stuff to say, so check that out in the feed later on. This one comes from Christina in Fort Myers, Florida. She says, what was your biggest perspective shift that you had that helped you own your personal power and value?
Asheesh.
I definitely have something that comes immediately to mind. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I was a founder of an organization. And then in my mid 30s and 40s, I was hired to run an organization. And now that I'm working in an organization that's as globally diverse as JA, I guess it's been a journey in humility for me, because when you're the founder, particularly if you have some success and the company gets bought, people start to assume that everything you say is right, and they don't even question it anymore. And it starts to make you think that what you say is right. And for me, I think it's been a journey for me of humility as a leader. It's just a mindset shift to realize that my job is to remove the obstacles that are holding people back from achieving their great ideas. So I spent a lot of my time in our organization trying to remove obstacles that are in people's way, that is stopping their progress. And it's frankly made me a better leader in a way that I just never would have known or anticipated. And frankly, shout out to you, Marshall. Your books and the network that you've created have really reinforced that and made it real for me. So thank you so much. A great question.
Thank you. Now, remover of obstacles. You have a Ganesh in your office.
Do I have a Ganesh in my office? Should I have a Ganesh in my office? I'm going to be silent and say I'm marshaling the resources to get a Ganesh in my office.
This Ganesh is the remover of obstacles. I have to give you a little Indian
Okay.
culture here. I know you need a dialectic.
Thank you for the Hindu reference. Yes, I missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, Ganesh did. Finally, it's time to wrap up. Thank you, Fiona. You're wonderful. You're doing some great work for women entrepreneurs around the world. Honored to know you. Thank you, Asheesh. Junior Achievement is a spectacular organization, helping not hundreds, but thousands and thousands. And finally, of course, thank you to my wonderful #1 coach comrade, Sanyin. Sanyin, any final comment?
Yes. Thank you all for joining us for today's show. On Friday, same time, same channel, we have 2 amazing guests, and that's about the books and arts as avenues for affecting social change and creating enduring resilience. And we have 2 great guests. It's going to be Tony Marks, who is the head of the country's largest library system, the New York Public Library, and my good friend, Deb Rutter, who is the president of the Kennedy Center. And they've been doing amazing programming in the arts throughout these past few months and beyond. So join us then. Thank you, everyone.
Yay. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.